shit, man. It feels like I'm just flailing my weapons around. I feel like a maniac. Like, I don't do any damage, man.
Hey, man, it does sound like you skipped arms day.
What? What are you talking about? I bench press and I push-ups and all that. What?
Now look at your legs, fool. You clearly skipped arms.
What do my legs have to do? What the fuck are you talking about?
Arms, man. Play fucking arms. Fucking it's not hard.
Like covenants and talents and rotation and legendaries and shit?
No.
All right. And more, right?
No.
Then how?
Hey, you know what else requires arms? Clicking that subscribe and bell thingy. Segue. No, really, that actually helps the channel a lot and it helps it grow and send the videos to everybody else. And of course, if we do some other cool stuff that you might be interested in, you will get the notification for it, which is really what this is all about, right? Right, YouTube? Thank you very much, and let's get on to the video. Transition! On the first row, you really have two options only. Skull Splitter is an all-rounder. It helps with rage management and fills in the gaps in your rotation where you could be rage starved. Not a lot to say about it apart from what you may already know if you have been playing arms in the past few patches. It works well in dungeons and raids and can be the better pick when low on gear. The alternative is Sudden Death. This baby has a chance to proc a free execute to be used on a target regardless of their HP level. This works even better with Condemn since, well, Condemn just pumps more than a regular execute. Depending on how you sim or like to play, you can take this in both raids and dungeons, although it may have more uses in raids. Moving down to the utility tier, take Double Time for all content. It gives your charge a second charge and provides the necessary mobility in raids more often than in dungeons. Raids have a few more mechanics that make you traverse distances often enough where a second charge can come in handy. This also comes with luck in being picked or not picked to do mechanics. Although it works okay in Mythic Plus dungeons, Stormbolt has a lot more utility here. Single target stuns have a pretty straightforward purpose within the context of a dungeon pool. There are things you want to interrupt, or soothe, or crowd control in any way, and for every target you cannot pummel or trank shot, you can stun it, most of the time. It adds another layer of crowd control that can compensate what your group could be missing. Moving to the third row, it's a three-way tie, ladies and gents. Massacre is an all-rounder talent that gives you a larger window in which to execute your target. If this sims better, or you want the last 35% of the boss's HP to go down faster, because, you know, it would be dangerous in a phase, because bosses are dangerous when they're angry. Yeah. Or you simply play Venthyr, then this talent is the go-to. It depends on what you want. More overall damage? More damage during execute phases? You may sim AoE scenarios or playtest them and see that quite a few people use Fervor of Battle for Mythic Plus scenarios. The talent didn't change from its past iteration. It packs a slam in your whirlwind, meaning it takes place of the actual slam ability during your single target rotation. Whirlwind, that is, because it was already part of your AoE rotation. Although the slam is free and doesn't trigger rage spending abilities, it will cleave with sweeping strikes. The problem with this is that the damage Whirlwind gives is pretty shit compared to overall Massacre damage, supposedly also cleaving it with sweeping strikes. You can go Fervor, but we still recommend Massacre in all scenarios, especially as you are getting used to the spec. Lastly, Rend will be your biggest single target increase if you are not Venthyr. It's an expensive bleed that we recommend you only use in raids since maintaining it on multiple targets is impractical even if it cleaves with sweeping strikes. As a non-Venthyr myself, this sims better in one-on-one fights, but you do lose the value of a stronger execute phase while adding an extra mechanic to manage. It's not a difficult mechanic by any means, but it brings with it the possibility of failure if you have to run and drop a puddle away from the boss, and Rend drops during that time. Although this can be said the same for Massacre, at least Massacre's value is squeezed into a smaller window, hence giving less risk opportunities. Next up, a survivability row, also split into 3 viable options. Defensive stance is a personal favorite. It's basically the old stance back. You have 20% damage reduction added to you while it's active, but you also deal 10% less damage. You can activate and cancel it at any time with a 6-second cooldown. With it being readily available almost at all times, makes this one incredibly versatile and our recommendation to pick as you are pushing tough content. If you know what's what and how and when you will be taking damage, Second Wind can be an alternative as long as the damage you aim to heal back won't actually put you into the danger zone. Danger zone! Also, it's a very good talent for Torghast runs if you don't want to switch to Fury or Prot. Play arms. There are a lot of people using this, but the constant damage ticks you get in both dungeons and raids where healing and mitigation would actually matter will break Second Wind very often, so we still recommend learning to use defensive stance, since it's an on-demand defensive with very few downsides. Bounding Stride is your added mobility option in raids. This gives you faster leaps and will be good if it times itself with mechanics that force you to move, and they would force you to move more often than what a normal leap would be able to solve. The 70% move speed buff is also very useful. The 5th row sees Warbreaker as the best on the entire row for both raids and dungeons. It makes your Colossus Smash and AoE Slam on the ground around you, deals decent damage and applies the damage intake debuff on all targets. Although from its design it's a multi-target talent, it has the most amount of single target damage as well. Plus the entire row is AoE focused anyway, just that the other options are underwhelming. Moving down, still only one best option in Avatar for all content, raids and dungeons alike. It lasts for 20 seconds, giving you a 20% damage increase during that time. It also breaks roots and snares, which is a nice bonus but not something you would normally want to save this for. Unless you are on the last boss of Necrotic Wake with an eccentric healer that refuses to dispel the roots correctly. But enough about my nightmares. Avatar now generates 20 rage when pressed and it's off the GCD. Lastly, you have 2 options. Dreadnought is the ideal choice for all Covenants while doing Mythic Plus dungeons. It deals AoE damage with its new iteration in Shadowlands, essentially packing the Azurite trait we had last expansion with its effect. It's also the best choice for raids if you are not playing Venthyr. For Venthyr players in raids, go with Ravager instead for more damage. It will replace Blazestorm and still function with the best legendary, the Signet, in the same way. But more on that later. You want to know what item to equip? Well, you gotta sim, friend. But what is this mystical simming everyone seems to be talking about? Well, you can actually go to raidbots.com and you will be able to put in your character's details or use the Simulation Craft add-on to copy your character's most recent data and paste it there. You can then simulate what your character can do with all of your gear pieces, talent, and so on. This is realistically the best way to know exactly what item is best from your inventory. Other than this, you can follow a point of reference that sees strength at the top as the best stat. This means eye level will be your best choice over everything. Also very important, your weapon eye level is worth way more than your normal gear. Since everyone has vaults and now we can upgrade gear as well, always prioritize your weapon over everything else if performance is your goal. After strength, go with critical strike and mastery as your 2 best performing secondary stats. Critical strike is self-explanatory and has taken the spot haste held for many years. The mastery Deep Wounds has also changed if you haven't played arms lately, and now it deals a smaller, way smaller bleed, but also increases the damage the target of your bleed takes from you by a percentage. This means you will need to maintain the bleed on your target or targets, but playing the rotation properly should ensure that it is never going to be a problem. Versatility and haste will be at the bottom, but that doesn't mean they are fundamentally bad stats. And this is just informative. The priority can change based on your gear, based on your talents, based on your covenant. Maybe not too much, but enough where there is really no universal right answer as to what is the best for you unless you test it or sim it. The argument of simming applies to enchants as well, but some are not as replaceable as others, unless you're filthy rich, in which case, hey man, got some gold for repairs? No? Well, at least you can get Sinful Revelation as your single target / raid / I just want to hit one target super hard, super fast, or alternatively get Celestial Guidance for a more balanced approach and something that can give you a boost against more than 1 or 2 targets. For your chest, go with Eternal Skirmish and a Heavy Desolate Armor kit in case you want to push difficult content and want to make sure you have the most amount of survivability. For the gloves, go with Eternal Strength and Fortified Avoidance for the cloak. The incoming AoE damage is pretty high this patch with Nathria and the Prideful Affix, among other things. So the little damage reduction from the cloak will actually start to add up over time, making it maybe one of the tankiest cloak enchants. In keeping with your stat priority, go with Deadly Jewel Cluster for your socket and the Tenet of Critical Strike enchant for your rings. These are usually the easiest and cheapest to replace and the more likely ones to change if you end up with a buttload of crit and Mastery starts to sim better for you. One of the best overall potions you can get for any content is the Potion of Spectral Strength, for both AoE and single target, unless a different one sims better for you for some reason. The flask is also straightforward, as in the Flask of Spectral Power, the only real option you have anyway. For your weapon, take either the Shaded Sharpening Stone or the Shaded Weight Stone, depending on your weapon type. Shadowcore Oil doesn't do as well anymore, even when paired up with synergistic potions. And lastly, for the food, the Feast of Gluttonous Hedonism will be your ideal choice, and if not, then simply go with the Spinefin Soufflé and Fries as the cheaper alternative. The top rating Covenant remains Venthyr. Condemned, together with the Nadia Soulbind, makes for a strong pair when it comes to single target damage. Dauntless Duelist and Thrill Seeker are essentially the two best conduits you can get from Venthyr when focused on taking the boss down, since the Dauntless Duelist cannot switch to a new target until your old one dies. We personally recommend Venthyr as the easier one to get into and the most popular choice when it comes to warrior DPS. Feel free to not be constrained by this, however. Obviously, you will go with Nadia for the foreseeable future because of Thrill Seeker and Dauntless Duelist, like we mentioned, for single target, but for dungeons, you can swap from Duelist to the other potency path and actually use 2 potency conduits. The best Covenant for dungeons, however, has been a toss-up between Night Fae and Kyrian. Night Fae was pretty much superior in terms of damage at all points during the patch, but the downside of having the mobs moved out of the Aftershock kept the competition close. Khorane with First Strike or Nia with Nia's Burst are incredible soulbinds to choose from. Night Fae is also close to Venthyr in raids in terms of damage. Kyrian was also best for PvP and Protection Warrior for people who wanted to branch out and get more gear that way. So it really comes down to you what you choose. As far as conduits go, Ashen Juggernaut will go nicely with Venthyr and the Massacre talent for a lot, and I mean a lot of execute damage, son. I think this was a Legion tier set bonus back in the day, and you and me and everyone knows arms will pump in execute phases. And if they don't, then pick this and they will. If you are doing Mythic Plus and have an extra conduit slot, potency that is, or you are not Venthyr or running Massacre, then crushing the ramparts is the next best thing. Obviously goes double well with the Dreadnought talent as the last row option and packs a real punch into your overpowers. The best endurance conduit you can get is Stalwart Guardian for the cooldown reduction on Die by the Sword, and if you couple it with the Finesse conduit, which you should Safeguard, you can actually intervene a fellow ally, a melee and a tank only if you know what you are doing, although we don't recommend it. You will be giving them damage reduction, and if you end up taking any melees, you can parry them with Die by the Sword. The Finesse conduit has the damage reduction even if you don't stay to take their hit. Alternatively, or as a second finesse option, Inspiring Presence bumps your Rallying Cries, HP boost and duration by quite a bit and obviously affects your entire group. This can save people from a ticking debuff that would kill them and or give your healers time enough to heal them back up. Currently, all 4 Covenants will be clearing high keys and mythic raid bosses, with Necrolord possibly on the rise with the new patch buffs. which is something you may see people use because you can buff the mastery levels of your group, essentially being another type of power infusion buff baby. It won't raise your damage too much, but it could raise your fire mages, unholy decays, and any real spec based on decent mastery levels. For Trinket, although it received some minor nerfs, Overwhelming Power Crystal still seems to perform the best, and it's one worth going for if you will be doing the other side dungeons, alongside the Phial of Putrefaction that drops from Plague Fall. Another more contentious trinket that you will see a lot of people have or want is the Inscrutable Quantum Device. The catch with this is one that the proc you get will be random, hence the question marks in its tooltip, and our aptly chosen name for it, the Trinket. Yes, it's gonna catch on. Some of the procs include giving mana to your healers or healing low HP targets based on your group's HP and mana statuses. A bit harder to control, but if you do manage to control its proc, it will give you massive stat boosts. Or if you are raiding instead, Stone Legion Heraldry is a strong contender even if its versatility, since if enough people in your raid use this, and there are a lot of specs that want this, the Heraldry can be one of your strongest trinkets since versatility is just a good stat to push content with. Or go simple and pick up the Dreadfire Vessel from the Nathris. Sure, these last two trinkets are dropping late into the raid, but they pump, and they pump hard. Other than this, you can always check bloodmallet.com or herodamage.com or simply sim with raid bots what you have or what you can loot with the Droptomizer option. There are two main legendaries you can go for right now. The best overall, mostly for Venthyr, but works great for other covenants as well, is the Signet of Tormented Kings. This one makes it so when you use Avatar or Bladestorm that you have a chance to proc a different buff out of Avatar, Bladestorm, or Recklessness. The buff is random and it will be different than the one you casted, hence you cannot get double Avatar or double Bladestorm. This legendary is also the best for Fury in case you change specs, so it could be a bigger incentive to craft first. Alternatively, if you are not Venthyr, mathematically, Enduring Blow will perform better in single target. Mortal Strike, having a chance to apply Colossus Smash for 6 seconds, offers you a 30% damage increase for 6 seconds every 4th Mortal Strike, which can add up. We recommend Signet for the best overall performance anyway, but feel free to explore and have fun. As with Fury, there is no real opener outside Charge and proceeding to the normal rotation. Assuming you are using the Signet Legendary, you don't want to pop Avatar until you are in Rage, cause it can also proc with a Bladestorm and then you cannot charge anymore and will end up losing a buttload of damage. As for the overall single target priority, keep up Rend at all times and refresh outside Colossus Smash windows. Use Skull Splitter at 60 or less Rage as long as Bladestorm is not going to be ready and make you cap Rage. Avatar before using Warbreaker, Ravager just before popping Colossus Smash, and can be paired with Avatar as well. Pop Warbreaker, use Bladestorm during the Warbreaker windows, use Overpower to buff Mortal Strike, which in turn you cast to maintain deep wounds. Fill in with Slam as long as you don't starve yourself of Rage when your next Mortal Strike becomes available. This is the mindset you should have when not within execute range. Single target execute phase, however, sees Skull Splitter at the top when below 60 Rage, Ravager only prior to an upcoming Warbreaker, which in turn you want to cast on cooldown. Use Mortal Strike to maintain deep wounds only. Overpower again as a free cost filler, execute as often as possible next. Note that the priority means the most important ability to cast at any given time based on what situation you are in. This is not the actual order in which you have to press your buttons, and even if I cap Rage or waste procs in this section of the video, the point here is to give you a rough idea about how to think when it comes to what to press. When fighting more than one target, at the top of the priority list is Sweeping Strikes, as long as you don't cast Bladestorm next, cause silly. Skull Splitter second with the same rules as before. Avatar just before Warbreaker. Pop Bladestorm during the Warbreaker window. execute normally if fighting 2 to 3 targets, or only during sweeping strikes if you're fighting more than 4 targets, in which case you also want to fit in filler slams during said sweeping strikes. Otherwise, overpower followed by mortal strike into the 3 target scenarios, or just fill in with whirlwinds if you have nothing else to press. Whirlwind sadly should be your last thing to press as a priority due to the low ass damage it has and the fact that we assume you don't take fervor of battle, in which case you can replace slams with whirlwinds, but we would still recommend running Massacre. This is just scratching the tip of the ARMS iceberg. A big thanks to Correjo, who helped us get ARMS right by making sure we weren't playing Vulpera. The feedback he provided made sure you have a top ARMS warrior telling you what's what. You can catch Correjo on his YouTube and Twitch links in the description, where he plays ARMS at a very high level and also covers stuff we didn't in our video. A thanks to Saraline from the BDGG Guild, Big Dumb Golden Guardians, also goes by the name Max in the Skyhold Discord and helped us with ARMS as well. You can chat with the dudes in the Skyhold Discord for more advanced ARMS goodness. Thank you to our Patreons as well for helping us create all of this awesome cool stuff. Your support does not go unnoticed and we are very, very grateful for it. And if you, dear viewer, are also interested in supporting us a little bit more, the link to our Patreon page is down below. You can also catch us stream pretty much all of this stuff on twitch.tv/MarcellianOnline. Thank you to everybody there and thank you for watching the video. See you in the next one.
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classic or retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.